Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. What if the apocalypse has already happened? How should we live in a post-apocalyptic world when all of the values of the previous one have been destroyed? Aleister Crowley had an answer. We should each live according to our own true will. By this he meant that every man and every woman must discover his or her own true nature and purpose in this world, and fulfill it. But the guiding principle in living that fulfillment must be love, and not love in the sense of mere sentimental affection. Crowley's philosophy further claims man has the right to love as he will, when, where, and with whom he will. Bisexual himself, he formally declared the absolute liberty of consensual sexual expression, with the force of prophetic authority. In 1904, Crowley received a text as a result of magical invocation, the Book of the Law. The law the book contained may be summed up in these words: Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. With the arrival of this new law, Crowley believed the old world order was completely overturned, destroyed by fire, as it were, and a new age dawned. He called his new system Thelema, Greek for will, and identified himself with the great beast of Revelation. Accordingly, Thelema declares Christianity obsolete, along with all other world religions, even while putting to use their most potent spiritual techniques, symbolism, and mythic narratives. Thelemites are often practitioners of magic, understood as the form of occultism developed by Crowley from his training in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and experiences with esoteric religions around the world. His techniques and theories have influenced generations of practitioners of divination, yoga, alchemy, spirit evocation, and astral travel. He was also a pioneer in the modern Western use of entheogens such as mescaline, and his social ideas support the full freedom not only of self-medication, but of self-exploration by such means. The Order of Oriental Templars, better known as Ordo Templi Orientis, or simply O.T.O., is the first religious body to base its work on the Law of Thelema. O.T.O. is essentially a vehicle for organizing and mobilizing under the law, since we can't expect any sort of deus ex machina to take us to a new Jerusalem. The old social forms are obsolete and oppressive, and humans need social contexts in which to temper and express our individual wills. Crowley introduced the Law of Thelema to O.T.O. in the early decades of the 20th century. But without his leadership, the order went into a dormant period for the 30 years following his death. Starting in the 1970s, surviving members began to reorganize, and growth has been fairly steady ever since. There are now thousands of active members, organized in over 40 different countries worldwide. The United States is one of 5 nations with a Grand Lodge or national section. O.T.O. includes 2 outer rites, or systems of ceremony, for the purpose of realizing the divine in the human. One is Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, a church body whose central ritual is a symbolic drama called the Gnostic Mass, intended to cultivate religious ecstasy without moralizing or superstition. Since the Book of the Law affirms that every man and every woman is a star, our church requires priestesses as well as priests. The clergy organize and lead group ceremonies, but we do not serve as intermediaries between the individual member and his or her God. The most important form of deity in Thelema is the personal genius, or holy guardian angel, which is understood to be unique for each individual. A person baptized in the church affirms, "I will know my own will. I will do my own will. I will rejoice in the will of my God. The other rite of O.T.O. is Mysteria Mystica Maxima, a set of graduated initiations using the methods of Freemasonry and the ancient mystery cults. Fraternal temple initiation in person may seem somewhat antiquated, and indeed the heyday of such work in the United States was the latter half of the 1800s. But living 21st century lives in video displays and smartphones deprives us of many of the contacts and sensory channels that previously could have integrated us into important age-old networks of human consciousness. The O.T.O. degrees redress these faults while developing self-discipline and self-knowledge towards the goals of individual liberty and universal brotherhood. Another important, but still largely unrealized dimension of O.T.O. is the establishment of intentional communities centered on profess houses. Crowley briefly operated such a project, the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily in the 1920s, and late in life he was making plans for another, to be called the Green Lion, which never came to fruition. The creative opportunity to bring such communities into existence is important to the Thelemic movement as a whole because, despite our basic emphasis on the liberty of the individual, we recognize that many of the most admirable and challenging aspects of human existence can only manifest in cooperation with others. People today intuitively grasp the obsolescence of many aspects of our social system. The reduction of men and women to consumers results in profound alienation, compensated only by the most superficial of freedoms. The Law of Thelema challenges us all to find a deeper sort of liberty that can empower us to remake society in a world which has already shifted under our feet. For my part, I maintain that Thelema is first and foremost the formula of spiritual development most suited to our cultural and historical circumstances. It includes a philosophy informed by suprarational experiences. It provides a basis for sacred observance that syncretizes the best elements of so-called world religions. As I see it, Thelema is more Christian than Christianity, and more satanic than Satanism. Aleister Crowley's prophetic status is an integral feature of Thelema, and I have no interest in rescuing the Thelemic movement from its founding figure, or in getting beyond his influence. Blessing and worship to the prophet of the lovely star. At the same time, the prophet's virtues include the obviousness of his shortcomings. He was a god the way any man might be. Thelema also has key literary and philosophical antecedents in the work of such historical figures as Augustine of Hippo, Francesco Colonna, Francois Rabelais, Sir Francis Dashwood, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Anna Kingsford, and Thelemites can benefit from consideration of those earlier strata. Since Thelema involves initiatory progress by individuals through tasks of spiritual attainment, there are necessary differences between the exoteric interpretations of non-adherents and beginning aspirants on the one hand, and the esoteric perspectives informed by initiatory experience on the other. However, I am willing to supply a short laundry list of teachings that I consider indispensable to Thelema and which serve to make it distinctive as a religio-philosophical matrix. The first of these is the importance of initiation itself. Crowley referred to the most important initiatory event as knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, and he identified this as the next step for humanity. This attainment involves an entity that is presumably unique for each individual, the personal genius, a spirit which attends the individual's most fundamental character or true will. The technical phrase, knowledge and conversation, is a misleading translation and often misunderstood. The Latin conversatio does not mean dialogue or discussion, but rather a way of life, associated especially with religious orders and monastic vows. Attainment to knowledge and conversation is thus not merely an encounter with the God of one's personal universe, but actually a discovery of and conversion to the idiosyncratic pattern of observance befitting that being which is set over the aspirant's highest personal destiny. Another key doctrinal feature of Thelema is global syncresis. In this respect, we draw on a long tradition that goes back to the classical Hermetic fusion of Greek and Egyptian wisdom, the Rosicrucian ideal of a general reformation to unite Islam and Christianity, and the efforts of the Theosophical Society to inform European occultism with Buddhism and other Asian traditions. All words are sacred, and all prophets true, save only that they understand a little. Such syncresis is not mere eclecticism driven by superficial tastes and appetites of individuals and local groups. Received earlier materials must be tested against and integrated with the core symbols and teachings of Thelema. The cosmopolitan and dialectical qualities of Thelema set it at odds with those schools that emphasize the purity or primordial authenticity of their teachings. And speaking of dialectic, a key element of Thelema is its sacred meta-narrative of human history under the symbolic figure of the precession of the equinoxes. As I mentioned at the outset, we hold that the current world age, or Æon, began in 1904, and is still finding its full expression. We are thus post-apocalyptic in our perspective, holding that the old order was destroyed by fire a century ago, and that it is our responsibility to manifest the Æon of the crowned and conquering child, for which the Law of Thelema is the principle and plan. In our view, history is neither a degeneration from an original paradise, nor a progress towards the static perfection of a utopia, but we affirm the existence of change on levels sufficiently deep to impact the spiritual condition of humanity as a whole. Without supposing that I have exhausted the most important components of Thelemic doctrine, the last one I want to remark is the idea of magic. In contrast to most contemporary philosophical and religious systems, Thelema asserts the positive value of magic as such. Crowley's definition of magic, the art and science of causing change in conformity with will, makes it rest upon will. Augustinian psychology marked out will as one of the three fundamental powers of the soul and identified it with desire. Crowley's theories also emphasize the role of the magical link, a concept pioneered in the work of the Renaissance martyr Giordano Bruno, who outlined the erotic basis of magical forces. Thus, Thelema, under the contentious idea of magic, advances the primary value of disciplined desire, and, in a certain fashion, the erotic foundation of all human activity and accomplishment. Love is the law. Love under will.